Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to episode 9 of Back to Basics, how to set up macros. Macros are slash commands that can be keybound. Setting them up can make several tasks that normally take more time or clicks, and streamline them. I hope this video helps. Enjoy. Alright guys, let's get straight into it. First things first, where do we go to look for macros? You can hit escape and go to macros, or what I normally do is I type /macro because I think that's easier. And here we have general macros. These show up on all of your characters on your account, and then you have character specific macros. Now let's go over which macros, a few common macros, and then some advanced stuff that you can get into as well, because there's a lot of advanced macro functions that people don't usually know about. And the first thing I want to go over is Mouseover effects. And what is a Mouseover? A Mouseover is, instead of you having to click the mob and then cast your ability, you could just mouse over the mob and hit the ability. I'm gonna hit my spell lock, and the pet automatically spell locks. So you could put this on corruption. You could do this with a rank 1 shadow bolt, and this is very useful because sometimes you're casting, say you're walking into the Iron Council hallway and you have like a little ad that's casting the fuse, and you want to spell lock it, but you don't want to retarget what you're seeding off of. You can just mouse over spell lock, and that's just one example of something you can do. There's mouse over corruptions, there's mouse over shadow bolt, there's mouse over all of these abilities, and this goes to other classes too. Like mage, I have a mouse over living bomb and a mouse over counterspell, and you could really apply this anywhere. Sometimes the mouse over macros can be finicky when they're working in conjunction with a weak aura. Like I have Kisney's multi-target weak aura for my warlock, and I have to click and then click off of it, move my mouse. It doesn't let me mouse over, but most of the time they are an increase to your quality of life, and I get a lot more spell locks on something like Algalon than some of the other warlocks, because I can just mouse over, click it, and keep my rotation Algalon without losing my dot tracker because I have to retarget with my weak auras. So that's the first macro we want to talk about. The second macro is kind of more interesting. It is, I want to talk about like a kitchen sink macro. For most classes, you have a variety of abilities that can be macroed together, and the thing that you need to find out is whether your abilities are on the GCD or not. You can tell an ability is on the GCD when I life tap. You see the abilities that rotate, that have the swipe effect. The ones that are rotating are on the GCD. So things that are not on the GCD right here, you can see boots are not, you can see the gloves are not, you can see the pot's not, sapper's not, and these are all things that can be macroed all together. That can be used all at once. Trinkets are not as well, so you can dump all of those into a macro. And if you have things that have similar cooldowns, for example, demonic embrace and gloves can be macroed together, and they have similar cooldowns, so you can get more uses out of your abilities if you macro similar things all together. And most of the kind of kitchen sink macros are on like class discords or streamer discords. I know Criteria's macros for mages, and Alondo has a lot of macros out there, and I have some macros on my Discord. But learning which abilities are not on GCD and being able to put them all together for big cooldown usage is massive. Because if I start my Drain Soul and I have both my trinkets, a potion of speed, and my gloves, and you use a CQS to kind of cast sequence it to make sure it goes through this sequence of events before you use your Drain Soul, it can be a lot of damage. Now, you don't necessarily have to use cast sequence. It's just this is particular for Warlock because it's essential that these go out before this, and you don't want any of these used after you start draining. So that's just for this. And there are other uses of sequence. I know mages for their kitchen sink arcane macro use cast sequence because there's like 18 things they put in there. But that's about it. You need, like, having a one big cooldown macro and then having those abilities keybound separately will increase the amount that you're actually using your cooldowns, which is kind of cool. I also want to move on to macroing some of your items. So typically you could do one of these where, let me just jump into this. You can shift left click and it'll equip any item. You could go into your basket. You want to use pot, shift, left click. It'll automatically use it. Go into your spell book, shift, left click, any ability. And there's the difference between equip, use, and cast. And you got to make sure you're using the right one so your macro won't necessarily work otherwise. And also, it's essential in every macro. This is a big pet peeve of mine, where you also do show tooltip. Because if you don't do the show tooltip, where it'll default show the first thing as the icon if you have the question mark and whichever item or ability you have first. But if you don't do this, you'll have something like where I have a GDKP macro, and if you mouse over it, it doesn't say anything. But if I take one of my macros with a show tooltip over it, like this Devour Magic, you can see it shows the tooltip on the bottom right there. So it's just a quality of life thing that I would encourage people to have in all of their macros. If you want to know which I guess item can join to which slot on your character, because gloves, for example, I have a boot macro I use on all my characters. Boots are 8, gloves are 10. I have a list here of each sock slot and what it corresponds to number wise, and I'll add that into the description of the video. But that is important to know as well. Now, having a boot macro and a glove macro for multiple characters, learning how to use Mouseover macros, learning how to use kitchen sink macros. You can macro your mounts together so you can have one mount keybind. This is simple mount setup where it'll try to use my flying mount. If I can't use my flying mount, it'll automatically use my ground mount. That's very useful as well. And then the last macros I wanted to talk about before I go into where you can learn how to more advanced tips for macros, things like stances and stuff, is a self-target macro. And this self-target Devour Magic macro will save your life. Have you ever been like stuck in Hodir and you're just sitting there waiting for a dispel and you're pumping as hard as you could, and then you die because of frozen blows and the dot just stacked up and the combined damage just took you out? You can save your own life with a self-devour. And I keybind this in a weird place. I keybind it to F2 because I don't hit it very, very often. I know when I need to hit it. But I have a Mouseover Devour Magic, and I have a self-Devour Magic to save my own life. And these are just a few small macros that can make your quality of life even easier. And I want to encourage you to look more into all the types of macros. There's very good written guides out there on more about different types of macros. For example, for warriors and druids, you could do different stances and change up your use multiple abilities in one keybind. Say you don't want to go into defensive stance and click an ability, you can make a macro where it swaps stances and use the ability in one blow, which is really useful. You could have macros where you have the same stance where you just click it twice and it swaps the stances for you, nice and easy. You could have one where if you're not in combat, you could use an ability. I know a lot of people that macro that saves them from pre-potting too early is they have a macro that says /cast no combat and then the pre-pot, and then it'll stop them from wasting their pre-pot if they're too late and the tank pulls before the timer or something. So that'll save you some gold in the long run. This just really scratches the surface, but thinking about how your abilities flow together and what you can produce will make you a better player. And there is an unlimited amount of macro. I'm out of general macros. I have a trinket macro for every single character, just very general. This is 13, 14, so I have a /use 13, and I have it in the same keybind, the same place in every single character. And I have a spec swap macro that I have for my rogue. There's an unlimited potential here, and I want to give you guys the tools to be able to figure out all by yourself. I will have a link down below where you can have a list of more macros. I will add all of these equip slots for you guys to explore. And I want to encourage you to ask questions. If you have macro questions, feel free to join the Discord and ping me in the questions channel. I will get back as soon as I can. There's been a lot of activity lately, and I hope this helps at least a little bit, because doing some research for this video actually taught me a thing or two about macros. So make some macros, have some fun with it, and see what you can do. Maybe you find some new tech. Hey guys, thanks for making it to the end of episode 9 of Back to Basics, how to set up macros. There really is almost unlimited potential for these. To put slash commands into a single button is a powerful thing, and learning how to use it will help you significantly. I remember when the badge vendor wasn't working properly, someone made a macro, you could just hit it, put the select amount, and trade the amount of badges you wanted, and that saved my life a few times. I have that on a bunch of characters as well. But besides that, if you guys have any questions, like I said before, please check out the Discord. I post everything that I'm doing in there when I'm going live on Twitch, videos I make on YouTube, and I am more than happy to help anybody at any time about any question as soon as I see it. So I want to tell you my next project, I'm going to be working on TOGC BIS, and I am exploring the items that I think are essential for warlocks to get right now, and which items aren't as important as we thought they were, and I will be putting that into a video next weekend. So for now, thank you guys for watching. If you like what you saw, please subscribe below, comment if you know a cool macro that most people don't know about, and just like the video. It helps out a ton. I want to thank you guys for your time, and hopefully I catch you in the next one. Peace.